Murder is not just an act, it's a mindset. A terrifying, calculated descent into darkness that has fascinated and horrified humanity for centuries. For as long as we have recorded history, we have recorded murder. Some say it's a sickness. Others believe it's an unavoidable truth of human nature. But the real question is, what drives someone to kill? Is it something they were born with? A shadow lurking deep in their DNA, waiting for the right moment to take control? Or is it something the world carved into them piece by piece, until nothing remained but violence? Are killers created? Or do they simply wake up one day and realize they already were? You decided, you voted, and this is the series you wanted, a deep dive into the most twisted minds in history. Every Saturday we'll explore a new killer, both real and fictional, to understand what separates them from us. And if that line is thinner than we'd like to believe. Tonight we step into the abyss. We unravel the psychology, the myths, and the horrifying true stories of the world's most infamous killers, because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones in our nightmares. For decades, psychologists have tried to unravel the mind of a murderer. What separates them from the rest of us? Are they born different, or do they become something else? The truth is, there isn't just one kind of killer. There are patterns, profiles, mental states that repeat across history. Some are cold, calculating, and methodical. They plan every detail. They anticipate every outcome. They don't feel remorse. Others are chaotic, impulsive, and driven by rage. They don't have a plan. They strike without warning. And when they do, they don't stop. And then, there are those who kill without reason. No trauma, no motive, no childhood abuse to explain the darkness inside them. The ones who don't fit into any category. The ones who kill simply because they want to. And that's the most terrifying truth of all. Because if some killers are made, but others are born, how thin is the line between their minds and ours? Hollywood has given us a certain image of a killer, the silent, masked slasher, the brilliant but deranged mastermind, the charming sociopath who manipulates his victims before striking. But how much of it is real? Could someone like Hannibal Lecter actually exist? Could someone like Patrick Bateman walk among us? Or are these just exaggerated nightmares, built to make us feel like we can spot the monster before it strikes? The truth is far more disturbing, because the real killers, they don't stand out. They blend in. They sit beside you in restaurants. They walk past you in grocery stores. They shake your hand and smile. And you never realize that behind that mask of normalcy lurks something else. Something waiting, watching, calculating. And when the moment is right, it strikes. Some killers are so infamous that their names are burned into history. Some are still unknown, their stories buried in darkness. But the one thing they all have in common, they never stopped killing until something stopped them. Let's step inside the minds of the most terrifying murderers the world has ever seen. H. Holmes, the architect of death. A man who built a hotel not for comfort, but for killing. A labyrinth of hidden rooms, soundproof walls, and death traps so intricate that it defied belief. A hotel where once you checked in, you never checked out. Jack the Ripper, the ghost of Whitechapel. A murderer who stalked the fog-covered streets of London. He took lives with surgical precision. He taunted the police, sent letters written in blood, and then vanished into history. To this day, we still don't know his name, or if he ever really stopped. Ed Gein, the real-life horror movie. A man whose crimes would inspire Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs. A killer who didn't just take lives, he wore them. A house filled with human trophies, a twisted monument to the darkness within his mind. The Axeman of New Orleans, a killer who loved jazz. A murderer who sent a letter claiming he would spare anyone who played jazz music on a particular night, and then followed through on his promise. A killer who was never caught. A killer who may have been something more than human. Some kill for pleasure, some for power, some for reasons we may never understand, and some just because they can. There's a reason we're drawn to stories like these, a reason we find them terrifying, but also fascinating. Because at the end of the day, we want to believe we could never become them, that there is something separating us from them. But if the right circumstances, the right pressures, the right moments all aligned, would we still be so sure? Or does the mind of a killer lurk in all of us, waiting for the right moment to wake up? Some killers are never caught. Some killers disappear. And some killers are never even identified. Like the phantom that haunted London's streets in 1888. A man who had no name. A man who wrote to the police and laughed at them. A man who left behind only fear and mystery. Jack the Ripper. This is where our journey begins. The year is 1888. The streets of Whitechapel, London are damp with autumn rain. Smoke from coal fires clings to the thick fog that rolls in from the river, twisting through narrow alleyways like ghostly fingers. The glow of gas lamps barely pierces the darkness, leaving shadows deep enough to swallow a man whole. But something far worse than the fog lingers here. Something walks these streets. Something hunts. By the time the city realizes what's happening, it's already too late. A killer is loose. A man who doesn't strike out of passion. A man who doesn't kill for money, or revenge, or even necessity. He kills because he wants to. He moves unseen, his footsteps silent as he disappears into the darkness. The only thing left behind? The mutilated bodies of women, their throats slashed, their organs missing like trophies taken from a hunt. The newspapers give him a name, Jack the Ripper. And as London trembles, Jack, he's still out there, watching. Because the truth is, no one ever caught him. Tonight, we enter the mind of a killer, one that was never found, one that may have never left. Jack the Ripper didn't exist before 1888. At least that's what we tell ourselves. But killers don't just appear from nowhere. They start somewhere. And though we may never know his real name, one thing is certain. He was among them, walking their streets, eating in their taverns, smiling at them in passing. By the time the first body was found, he had already evolved. Some killers begin with small acts of cruelty, torturing animals, violent outbursts, obsessions with death. But Jack's first known crime? It wasn't clumsy. It wasn't amateur. It was surgical. And that suggests something chilling. This wasn't a man learning to kill. This was a man who already knew how. Was he a doctor? A butcher? A former soldier trained in the art of bloodshed? Whoever he was, he understood anatomy. He knew where to cut. He knew how to make it look like a statement. But what was that statement? And why did it have to be made this way? The first confirmed victim was Mary Ann Nichols, found in the early hours of August 31st, 1888. Her throat was slashed, her abdomen ripped open, her insides exposed like an autopsy performed in the shadows. No robbery, no assault, no hesitation. London barely had time to react before he struck again. Annie Chapman, September 8th. Her wounds were even worse. This time he removed organs. The precision was disturbing. The police were baffled. The newspapers were hungry. And Jack? Jack was just getting started. His signature was becoming clear. His victims were always women, always sex workers, always found in dark, narrow alleys where no one could hear them scream. And the way he killed them? It wasn't quick. It wasn't efficient. It was deliberate. He wasn't just taking lives. He was sending a message. September 1888. London's fear had reached a boiling point. And then the letter arrived. A letter written in blood-red ink, sent to the Central News Agency. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. It was signed simply, Jack the Ripper. The name stuck. Days later, another letter arrived. This one was different. It came with a piece of human kidney, preserved in alcohol. The letter claimed it was from one of his victims. The police never confirmed whether it was real or not, but by then it didn't matter. The legend was already written in blood. September 30th, 1888. A cold, windless night. A woman named Elizabeth Stride was found dead in an alley. Unlike the others, she wasn't mutilated. Her throat was slashed, but nothing more. Why? Some believed Jack had been interrupted before he could finish. If that was true, it meant he was still out there, still hunting. Just 45 minutes later, another body was found. Catherine Eddowes. This time, Jack made up for lost time. Her face was carved apart. Her kidney was missing. Her intestines were pulled out and draped over her shoulder as if he wanted it to be seen. This wasn't just killing. This was rage. Something had gone wrong with the first victim that night. So he took his anger out on the second. And London was paralyzed with fear. November 9th, 1888. Jack the Ripper killed for the last time. Her name was Mary Jane Kelly. But this wasn't like the others. This wasn't quick. This wasn't methodical. This was something else. Her body was destroyed beyond recognition. The room she was found in, it looked like a slaughterhouse. Jack had spent time with her. He had taken his time. And then, he disappeared. No more victims. No more letters. The killings stopped. Did he die? Did he flee? Or did he simply become someone else? Who was Jack the Ripper? A doctor, a man with surgical precision, a member of the royal family. A theory that suggests a cover-up, a butcher, someone who worked with knives every day, unnoticed, or something else entirely. One thing is certain, Jack wasn't a man who got caught. Jack was a phantom, a ghost in the night, a shadow in history, a name that will never die. Because fear never fades, and the fear of Jack the Ripper, it still lingers, even now. Most serial killers get caught. Jack didn't. Which means only two possibilities. One, he died, either by illness, accident, or his own hand. Two, he changed. What if Jack didn't stop? What if he just became someone else? Another city, another name, another series of killings that no one ever connected back to him. If that were true, it would mean the greatest serial killer of all time didn't vanish. He simply moved on. Jack the Ripper was never caught. But there are killers who were. Killers just as terrifying. Like H.H. Holmes, the man who built a hotel designed to kill. Next week we step inside, into the murder castle, and into the mind of a killer.